Here we are in Visual Studio Code now, and I'm going to create a new folder in my desktop, and let's name it as Speckle Dashboard. And I'm going to add that folder to my Visual Studio Code. And let's create a new file called main.py. So this is going to be our Python file. I'm going to right click and open it in integrated terminal. So let's get this on the right hand side, and yes. So as I said, I have already written the script, and there will be a couple copy and pasting. And let's start with importing our libraries. So I'm going to start with Streamlet and import Streamlet as st. So now Streamlet is imported. I'm going to save this, and in the integrated terminal I'm going to type in Streamlet run main.py. So Streamlet run basically runs this script and generates a web application out of it. So let's see. Right now it is being created, and voila, just like that. So since we have nothing in it now, we don't see anything. So once we start adding a couple components, it will get its final shape. All right, so we have imported Streamlet. Let's continue with SpecklePy. So from SpecklePy, we are going to import two things. First, we're going to import Speckle client. So this client basically allows us to, interact with the Speckle server. So I'm going to say from specklepy.api.client import Speckle client. And then, as I showed at the beginning, we are dealing with tokens. So we need to get our account from the token. So I'm going to say from specklepy.api.credentials import get account from token. So get the local account for the token. So these are the SpecklePy libraries. Let's import pandas. So I'm going to say import pandas. Import pandas as PD. So we don't have to type pandas every time. And I'm going to import Plotly Express as well. So let's say import plotly.express as px. Okay, so this is actually all the libraries. Let's continue with our web page now. So I'm going to start with setting some configurations about our page, such as, right here it says main Streamlet and the default Streamlet icon is shown, but I want to, customize it a little bit. So I'm going to set my page config, and so we have imported Streamlet as st. So I'm going to type in st dot set underscore page underscore config. All right. So I'm going to say my page title will be Speckle Stream Activity, and my page icon will be a graph icon. So to get icons, I use Windows and dot, and then type in. So I'm going to say graph and select this. So once I set this, now the page icon will be this icon, this emoji, and the title will be Speckle Stream Activity. So let's save it, and source file changed. I'm going to select always rerun, so we don't have to select run every time when we make a change in our file. And just like that, now the page title is set as Speckle Stream Activity, and the icon is changed to the emoji. Okay, so we are done with our page config as well. So let's continue with creating couple containers. So these containers will basically store the elements, and as I showed at the beginning, we had a header first in which I had the web app title as well as the description, and then I asked for a couple inputs from the user. That'll be another container, and then I'll have a container that will store the Speckle viewer. As you may remember, I showed it at the beginning, the latest commit viewer. And then we'll create a report that'll showcase a couple of statistics, such as the number of commits, branches, etc. And finally, I'll create a couple of graphs. So I need 5 containers. So I'm going to say header will be st.container, parentheses. Now a container will be created for a header. I'm going to do the same thing for input, st.container. Viewer will have its container as well, st.container again. So for reports, I'm going to do the same thing. And finally for graphs, st.container. Okay, so we have created our containers as well. Let's continue with our header. So I'm going to say my page header. So first we need to reference the header container from here. So I'm going to type in with header. Let's edit title. And adding title using Streamlet is pretty straightforward. You simply type in st.title. So this will be our page title. And I think you should only need it once. Then I'm going to type in my string, will be Speckle Stream Activity Application. Let's add an emoji and maybe this guy. Okay, so once you edit, your title will be set as this string. I'm going to save this. And just like that, Speckle Stream Activity App. Easy peasy. All right, so let's add our description of our application as well. So I'm going to say about app. I'm going to type in st.expander. So this expander will actually store our description. So we can edit this way, st.expander, but I want it to be associated with the header container. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say with header.expander. And then in the expander, I'm going to say this is going to be about this app, and let's add an emoji. So let's add an arrow, maybe that shows down, something like this. Yes. And whether if it's going to be expanded or not will be a Boolean. And we will say this is going to be a true. I'm going to save this. And oops, I think I forgot. I think I made a mistake. So I'm going to type in st.markdown. And let's add a couple things here. And yes, now. So we had added our expander into this container as well. So I can, expand, de-expand, etc. So st.markdown basically adds a markdown. But since we have referenced it with a with, it's going to be stored in the expander thing. All right, so let's add our definition. I'm going to say something like this, maybe. So let's add a multi-line comment. This is, what, I'm just going to copy and paste. So let's get this out of the way. I'm going to save it. So yeah, this is a beginner web application developed using Streamlet, etc. So we have created, I think, our header section. Now we have our page title as well as an expander thing that stores the description of our application. All right, great. So I'm going to delete these guys and save it. And let's continue with our inputs. So our inputs, let's type in inputs. So again, we have created a container for that as well. So I'm going to say with input, and let's create a header again. I'm going to type in st dot, and we only need a single title for our web application. So I'm instead of using a header, I'm going to use a subheader. So type in subheader, and our subheader will be inputs, just like in a markdown. I'm going to save it, and inputs is right here. Great. So we need to create couple user input areas, and those inputs will be side by side. So I need to create columns that will store those inputs. So let's do that. I'm gonna get this guy out of the way, and let's create columns for inputs. So the first one will store my Speckle server input. I'm going to name it as server column, and the other one will store the token, and the other one will be token column. So these two will equal to st.columns. I'm going to type in st.columns, and I need 2 columns, right? So I'm going to type in st.columns and 2. So now columns are created for those elements as well. Let's add the input boxes to that columns. I'm going to type in user input boxes, right? So the first one will store my Speckle server data. I'm going to say Speckle server will equal to, so usually we do st.text_input to get input from the user, then type in the definition. For instance, this is going to be my server URL, and the default value for that, the value will be speckle.xyz, right? And then if I save this, you'll see my inputs. But as you can see, it expands the whole width of the page. I don't want that. I want the half of it maybe, or a third of it. So I need to initiate this user input with the column. And instead of st, I'm going to say server column and save it. Now, as you can see, 2 columns are created side by side. And when I say a server.column text inputs, the text input is being stored and using the width of our column. All right, let's do the same thing for token. I'm going to say Speckle token will equal to st.text input, and it's going to ask for Speckle token. This is going to be the title of my user input, and the default value will be the token I created for this tutorial. And just like that, the same thing happened. I need to associate this element with the column. I'm going to type in token column. And when I save it, now as you can see, these 2 inputs are side by side. But right now, by default, the columns have the same width. But I know that the length of my server URL will not be as long as the Speckle token. So I need more space for the token. So what I can do is simply I can create a list of numbers that will store like the ratio of columns with each other. For instance, I can say the first column will be, if the first column is 1, let's make the other one 2. So it's going to divide the width of the page into 3 and assign 1/3 to the server column input and the 2/3 to the Speckle token input. I'm going to save this. And now, as you can see, the width of the token is much better. All right. So now we have created our server URL as well as Speckle token and created 2 variables called Speckle server. So when the user changes this default value into something else, that value will be stored in the Speckle server variable. And when the user inputs its own Speckle token, that value will be stored in the Speckle token variable. Okay, so we are done with the creation of our inputs. I'm going to save this guy as well. And let's continue with interacting with our Speckle server. So now is the exciting part. Actually, we're going to interact with the Speckle server. So first I'm going to create a variable called client, and I'm going to say Speckle client, and my host for that client will be my server URL, server variable called Speckle server. Great, now I have that client. So let's get our account from the Speckle token as well. So I'm going to say get account from token, and this will be my account get underscore account. As you may remember, we have imported this from the Speckle Pi API credentials, import get account from token. And I'm going to say we need the first input will be the Speckle token, and the second input will be the server URL. So I'm going to say my token is stored in the Speckle token variable, Speckle token, and my server is stored in the Speckle server variable. Great. So we have our account, we have our client. Let's authenticate. So I'm going to type in authenticate. We're going to do a client dot authenticate with account, and I'm going to say authenticate using my account variable, and let's save it. So first we have created a client for the server using Speckle client, then we have get our account from the token and the server, and finally we have authenticated using our account. So now, since we have authenticated, and I know that I am using the correct input, let's get our stream from Speckle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new variable called streams, and let's get all the streams from our list. I'm going to say streams list will be here. So how do we get that? So first we need to call our client, and then I'm going to say stream dot list. So all the streams will be listed in this variable. And if you want to see how that streams looks like in the Streamlet, you can simply type in st.write and then streams and save. And just like that, all the streams is listed right here. Okay, great. So now I know that all the streams are here, but I need to, as I said, I need to create a drop-down menu that'll store the stream names only. So first, let's get our stream names. And it's actually quite easy. For S in streams, I'm going to say for S in streams. So we're looping through each stream. Get their name, s.name, and let's store it in a variable called stream names. So now all the stream names are stored in this variable. I'm going to write that as well, stream names, and save it. Stream object has no attribute. Right, so I think I made a mistake. Typo error. Instead of capital N, I need to use the okay, now that works. So all the stream names are listed right here. Great. So I thought I made a mistake. Right, so let's create a drop-down menu out of this list, and we are going to create a drop-down for stream selection. And it's quite easy actually. I'm simply going to type in st.select box. And then first we need to define a label. I'm going to type in label, and we're going to say select your stream, and options for this drop down menu will be my stream names right here. So it's stored in there. I'm going to type in stream names and let's save it. So now we have created a new drop-down menu that shows all the stream names. All right, so let's continue. So once the user selects a stream, it selects its name actually. So we need to get a stream from its name. So let's do that. I'm going to type in selected stream and first I think we need to create a variable that'll store that value. So I'm going to say sname. So sname will store my selected stream name, right? And using that variable, we can get the stream that has that name. So I'm going to say client that stream that search. So the search function basically allows us to get a stream using its attributes, such as its name. So I'm going to say get a stream that has this name, sname. And let's write it actually. So I'm going to store this one in a variable called stream and let's write that. So I'm going to save this and just like that. So for instance, now if I change this into another stream, you know, it updates and gets its ID, name, description is public, etc. So now since we have the stream, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get all the branches as well as commits from that stream. So, you know what, first I think we should print out the type of the stream. So I'm going to type in type stream. So as you can see right now, the stream returns as a list because it can return more than one item. So I need only a single element from that list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say get the item at index 0. And just like that, now the returned object is a Speckle stream object. Great. So let's get all the branches. I'm going to say stream branches, right? So let's store all the branches in a variable called branches, and it's going to be client.branch.list. So this will list all the branches in a given stream. So I need to give the ID as the input. So since we have the stream stored in this variable, I can easily get its ID. So what I'm going to do is list all the branches of the stream.id. So we get the ID of our stream using stream.id. And let's print out that as well. So I'm going to say branches and save it. And just like that. So let's select one of them, for instance, Rhino to BIM. And now this one has 1 and 2 branches, and each branch has its commits as well. So these were stream branches. Let's continue with stream commits. And I'm going to create a new variable and call it as commits. And we're going to do client.commit.list. And then this also expects a stream ID. So we are going to give our stream.id again. And we need to define a limit for commits as well, because we can have more than 10 commits in our stream. So I'm going to increase that value to 100. So limit will be 100. And let's print out our commits using st.write again. So now all the commits made to this stream are listed right here. So now we are done with this part. We have created server URL, Speckle token, inputs, created a drop-down menu, and then we can get the associated branches, commits from the selected stream name, etc. All right, so I'm gonna delete these guys and let's continue.